Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2018 Preschool Mindfulness Conference. I'm very happy to introduce our next guest, Dr. Claudia Vega. Dr. Vega is located in Mazatlan, Mexico. Did I say that right? And she runs the Center for Mindful Eating there. She's a pediatrician, and she's also studied psychology and combined them to help children and adults with things related to food and mindfulness and good body image and things like that. So she's going to tell us more about that as we go on. So welcome and thank you for joining.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
So, Claudia, the first thing I wanted to ask you is, what do we mean when we say mindful eating? What's the difference between mindful eating and just normal eating?
Okay, well, the definition of the Center for Mindful Eating is to become aware of all the opportunities that we can find through the experience of eating and food, to become aware of our own body's wisdom by listening to our cues of satiety and hunger, and also to be able to see and acknowledge our reactions or responses to food. For me, in simple words, is just to be fully present, using all our senses, and be able to actually observe the current experience about eating or around eating and food. And not only while you're actually eating, but I think even from before, right? Like when you're starting to think about food and what are your choices and how you're going to prepare food. Because if we observe that, we can self-discover so much, discover so much about us, our relationship with food, our own ideas about food. So I think it is an opportunity for self-discovery and also to see and be able to change our relationship with food. And regular eating, I would say, for some of us, it could be just eating in a very unconscious way. You know, sometimes we eat and we don't know we ate until we look at our plates and the food is...
all the chips are gone. Yeah.
Fill the food up to here. But, you know, or sometimes you don't even savor, and then there's like a sensation that something is missing. But for others, and here I would say children in particular, like even up to the preschool age years, for some of us, eating, like regular eating, would be mindful eating. Children are an example of that. They savor the food. They tell you what they like and what they dislike. They know when to start eating and when to stop. So the difference would be for those of us that can eat completely unconsciously.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of us as adults and parents have our own issues with food. You know, lots of people are always on a diet, or they're not happy with their bodies, or they have some kind of fear of foods. So how do these kind of obsessions or unhealthy practices that we have developed as adults, do we transfer them to our children, or is there a way that we can not do that? Help our children develop healthier habits?
Yeah, well, you know, you as a mom may also know that being a parent is something that can be thought of something simple, but it's quite complex. And I think that unless there's an issue in the head or a mental issue, most of us try to raise our children in the most positive way. Unfortunately, some of the things that we do are unconscious, because as we grow up, we're learning all the experiences or getting all these ideas and conceptions that we are going to pass when we become parents. There's no such thing like a manual to be a father or a mother. So eating is a habit. And when we try to teach habits, well, we kind of pour all our ideas and fears and emotions and all that into our children's brains and souls. So when I say that is, if I'm trying not to do that as a parent, I would first take the time to to reflect on what is that I learned when I grew up, right? What are the experiences in my childhood that now make me believe that this is the right way to teach my child? And not only about food, in general, right? And to look at those ideas and question them without judgment, more with like a curiosity, like in an open-minded way, and reflect on what actually worked for us and what didn't, right? And also to understand that our children are different people, right? Because I think that when we're parents, unconsciously, we try to live through our children things that we didn't have the opportunity to go through. And we are completely unaware of that. So review what are our ideas, what worked for us. And another thing that I would say is when teaching children, we have to be aware that we are modeling all the time. Children learn way more from what they see than from what they hear. And so sometimes we're telling them, eat your broccoli, and the mother doesn't eat the broccoli, right?
Yeah.
You know? And also we're all the time we're teaching what we think and feel, like this dualistic way of thinking of right eating and wrong eating, and where did that come from, right? So I would say that by reviewing our own ideas, checking what really works, allowing our children to be different people because they are, and modeling would be something that I would consider, so that we don't pass those fears on to them. And lastly, very important, Helen, I would review our parenting styles. Sometimes we can be very authoritative, other times we can be very permissive. But something that should not be questioned is love. We should love our children and accept them unconditionally, because unfortunately sometimes we condition our manifestations of love according to what our children are doing, right? If they behave well, then we manifest love. Or if they do what I think they should do, then we applaud. So I would reflect on that. No matter what, no matter how much she weighs or how she eats or their skills in school, we should be able to love them unconditionally.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. So you talk a lot about emotional regulation with children, and why it's very important to teach young children this. So can you explain a little bit about that and how you go about doing
that? Yes, gladly. Well, my understanding of emotional self-regulation is precisely as it says, right? To be capable of managing or regulating, I would not say controlling, but regulating my emotions. Emotions are unconscious, are spontaneous. We cannot stop feeling emotions because they're going to happen. They're part of the human experience, right? But we certainly can change the way we respond to them, the way we react to them. So for that, I think the first thing is that we can teach children to, number one, identify their emotions, right? What is this that I'm feeling? Why am I acting this way when my mom says no, or when something is not the way I want? Or what is sadness, right? To teach them to be able to identify their emotions, and therefore, how can they manage them in a better way? Why is it important? Well, because if we're able to self-regulate, we are going to have more options. Otherwise, our emotions are going to take control, and we're going to, acting accordingly. So I teach children to understand how thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are related, and how it is, in the end, us who decide how we're going to respond. And I think it's important because we want children that when they grow up, they can be responsible of their lives. Right?
Exactly. And how does that emotional regulation then link with mindful eating?
Well, then mindfulness for me is this opportunity to create awareness, to create insight, to know myself better. Once I start understanding what's going on with me without judgment, then I'm in a different position. Then I can regulate. And that can be translated into the way I eat, the way I behave in other aspects. So also when we use mindfulness, or when we learn mindful eating, well, then we understand that I do not necessarily eat because I'm physically hungry. It could be that I'm bored or sad
Right.
or anxious or angry. So children start to understand, and it's amazing because sometimes as adults we underestimate the capacity that they have to make insight, and they can tell you, young as 8 years old, you know what, Claudia, I think I ate because I was very upset with my mom, or I was very bored, or I felt very lonely. So understanding that can help them.
Great, thank you. And what are some of the common issues that children have around food nowadays, and how can mindfulness and emotional regulation help them overcome those obstacles? I know there's a lot of obesity in a lot of places.
Yeah, well, with issues around eating and feeding, it's like a span, right? We have on the one hand the kid that eats very little, and on the other hand the kids that eats probably too much. And here the first question is, the amount or the way the child eats is wrong or right according to who, right? Because sometimes it is our expectations as parents or adults that we think we know how much or how they should eat. But in that span, well, we have picky eaters, children that actually have difficulty trying different foods, that have a very, very, how do you say, not varied diet, and just eat certain foods. And then we have children with neophobia, which are the ones that do not dare to eat nothing new. And then we have children that are eating emotionally, as I said before, restricting themselves because they learned somewhere that if I restrict myself, I'm going to lose weight, and losing weight is good because I don't want to be fat, So, and then we have children that are completely disinhibited, that eat nonstop and do not know, lost the capacity that they had as little children to know when to start eating and stop eating. So those are basically like I would say the big or broad categories of we find around eating with children.
Right. So what are some of the strategies to help children that are having these obstacles to overcome them?
Okay. I would say here that even before thinking of mindful eating as a tool to help the child, I would go in in parts. Now, first I would review with parents what are the concerns, because sometimes when you do the history and you listen to them, you can detect that it's all a matter of what they think. And sometimes there's not such problem. Sometimes there is, and if there is, well, then you're going to do something about it. Working with the parents, I have found, is the most important thing in order to help children, because as I said before, children are learning from the environment. Also, the relationship that exists between the caregiver and the child around eating becomes a cycle. If the caregiver is stressed, anxious, pushes the child, or tries to restrict the child, that translates into a behavior in the child, which in return feeds back the cycle of problem, right? So in case that there's actually a problem, I would suggest to search for help, professional help, that you do not know, to be humble enough to say, well, this is something that is not working. I've been struggling with my child and his or her eating for 4 years now, and let's do something, right? And I think that is very important, Helen, because the sooner that we act, the better it will be for the child. So what would be some of the strategies? Well, first, to actually observe what's going on, review if I'm bringing tension to this relationship, me as a mother or me as a caregiver. Also, I would say, do not make the table a battlefield. Meals should be opportunities to get to be together and get to know each other, check how your day has been going. They should be ideally a good time. Sometimes we're so rushed that we don't have enough time. But even then, the table should not be a battlefield. Another strategy that I would highly recommend is to get information, proper information. Ellen Satter has this division of responsibility. I love this author. She has several books about eating for children and families. And she says that parents are responsible for the what to eat. So you buy the food, you bring healthy and a variety of food to the house.
Yeah.
Where and when. But children should be allowed to decide how much food and whether they eat or not, right? So when we think about that, for some parents that like to control, that doesn't sound very well, but it's important to consider reviewing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So those are really great suggestions. Now, I know you mentioned that you have a list of resources that you wanted to share with the viewers. So shall we attach that to your we have a speaker page, so we could put that on there for parents who want to read some of the resources that you recommend. And
Yes.
And also, Claudia's very kindly offered, you have to be a Spanish speaker for this, but I'm sure we have Spanish speakers on. So the first 3 people who email her, she will give them a 30-minute free consultation by Skype or by phone. You can get advice straight from her. So that's really wonderful and very generous of you.
And I want to say something before we go, just very, very important.
Yes.
That we as parents should remember that we are always modeling. Even when we do not say or do anything, we are teaching because our children are observing. And sometimes we want to control our children through food. Like, if you do this, I'll give you this food, or you won't get food unless you eat this other one. And inadvertently, we're creating a lot of conditioning in the way they likely suffer.
Yeah.
So let's remember that, because in the end, if we want to raise happy, healthy children, we should be aware of those things that we might do without even noticing. So let's bring peace and happiness to the table.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. That was great. Thank you, Claudia. And we'll have Claudia's website as well. So if you want to look on there and find out more information, or you're going to Mexico, you can stop by and see her. And but she has lots of information. I know she has a book in progress. So we'll look out for that in the future too. But thank you so much for taking the time to join us and tell us all these very useful information and strategies that parents can use.
Gladly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Claudia.